Well, this is my presentation for the Truth and Reconciliation project. So for child welfare, call to action number 5, the call to action I wrote was governments working to create parenting uh, for indigenous that respect their culture and traditions. The progress was proposed. It's in progress right now, and It was last updated since March 18th of 2025. And my analysis was how that I think indigenous kids need more helpful things like daycare, and it would make their lives a little bit more better for getting to know people and like having a safer environment, and it would be like easier for the parents. Like it would be a little bit easier on them. And then for education, call to action 11, I wrote my call to action saying that calling upon the federal government to provide satisfactory funding to Native students to seek post-secondary education. The progress was proposed, so it is in progress right now, and it was last updated on April 3rd of 2024. My analysis is that I think the government isn't being fair because of how they broke their promise. So they said they would pay them 50 million, but instead they ended up taking off 10 million. So they fell short by 10 million. So it was like students were unable to get education, like the education they needed. They weren't able to get that because of the government cutting off the money that they were supposed to owe the indigenous people by $10 million. So language and culture, call to action 17. My call to action that I wrote was how this call to action is saying that indigenous people want their names back. Because they had indigenous names, but they got taken by colonizers. Which is like the colonizers wanted to take over the indigenous people, and that's why they took away the indigenous people's names. So if they had an indigenous name, they would be called like Olivia or something, and they would go by that name. They were forced to. And the progress was, it's in progress. The project is underway, and it was last updated on April 1st of 2025. And then my analysis is that I think it's a good thing that indigenous people can find a way to get their name back, because most provinces are already giving indigenous people their name, except for one province, but I can't remember. But they're already getting their names back. They can get it back in like say 2035 or something. So I wrote that it's good that they're getting their name back because it gives them more power over their name, and like it gives them more confidence to be themselves. And then for health, oh, this is the first page. This is the second one. So for health, call to action number 21. My call to action that I wrote was indigenous people want specifically Aboriginal healing centers to address the physical, mental, and spiritual harms caused by the residential schools. Because when they were in residential schools, they were like, in residential schools, the indigenous people, the kids that were enrolled in the school, not really enrolled because they got like forced, but the people who were in residential schools, they went through a lot of abuse and a lot of like sexual assault and stuff. And Indigenous people want to create centers and want to have centers, like centers that can help people. So they want those centers, those healing centers, to help them forget and help them with what they had to deal with in the past. So this progress is underway, and it was last updated on April 2nd. And the analysis I wrote is how it's not fair at the fact that Indigenous people aren't getting the mental health treatment that they need, but instead government isn't giving them what they need because they don't care. So the government doesn't really care for the Indigenous people. Okay, so for justice, call to action number 39, I wrote that Indigenous people want the government to keep track of the crimes that were committed against them, like them as in the Indigenous people, and be in the data, like to be in the data and collect and publish all of the data and the crimes so that people are aware and everything. So the progress was actually completed. It was completed, and it was last updated in March 25 of 2025. So my analysis, I wrote an analysis because I wasn't sure if I was supposed to, even though it was completed, but I still wrote one. So I wrote how Indigenous people can get sexually and physically assaulted, and I think that needs to be documented so that people can be aware and be given programs to heal. So in health, that also connects to justice, because it talks about like needing physical, mental, and spiritual harms that, like, that's what the Indigenous people want in healing centers. So that kind of connects to justice. So for my last one, reconciliation, call to action number 54. My call to action was how Indigenous people want funding for reconciliation trust by the National Council for Reconciliation organization, so they can continue the reconciliation efforts. So this was actually not started, and it was last updated on May 1st, 2025. So the analysis that I wrote is that I think people want, the analysis that I wrote was how I think that people need an organization to help them get healed from the past and the trauma that they had in the residential schools and just anything else. So that's why Indigenous people want the organization, which is the National Council for Recognition. They want to find ways from them to heal from their trauma. So that was my presentation. I can give you the work on Tuesday so you can see it. So for child welfare, I did write a sticky note for progress. So I'll just read that for you right now. It was like in child welfare progress. So I wrote that some progress has been made but hasn't had none of the 5 calls to action completely. So I wrote that some programs have been made, but hasn't had none of the call to actions completed. So yeah, like the call to actions weren't completed, but they are being made. So they are in progress, but nothing's really coming up right now, because it's not completed like fully. But that's all. That was my presentation, and I will show you the paper on Tuesday. But that's all.